This is what the emperors of Rome dined on: tender roasted peacocks glazed with honey, fine wine imported from Greece, and bread baked with the purest white flour. Senators feasted under golden ceilings, laughing over silver plates and fresh fruits from the empire's farthest corners. Now, this is what the slaves ate: a lump of hard, dark bread, a bowl of grain porridge so plain it barely had taste. Maybe a few beans, if they were lucky. Being a slave in Rome was not just about chains and whips, it was about survival on scraps. You were property, not a person. You worked until your body broke, and at the end of the day, your reward was food fit more for animals than men. This wasn't just hunger, it was humiliation. A system built to keep you weak, obedient, and forever reminded of your place. In the glittering empire that ruled the ancient world, one truth lay buried beneath its marble streets. Rome's greatness was built on empty stomachs.
To friendship and good fortunes.
Here.
Bread and chains, the harsh reality of a Roman slave's meal. Imagine walking through the grand streets of ancient Rome, marble columns shining under the sun, laughter spilling from wine-soaked banquets, and the smell of roasted meat drifting through the air. But behind all that beauty and power, far from the music and gold, there's another world, the world of the Roman slaves. While senators reclined on couches, dipping bread in honey and wine, slaves crouched in dark corners, eating something that barely deserved to be called food. Their meal? A hard, dark loaf of bread so rough it could cut your gums. Sometimes it wasn't even bread, just pulse, a mushy porridge made from boiled grains and water. No spices, no oil, no taste, just enough to keep them alive for another day of work. You see, a Roman slave didn't live. They endured. Their masters calculated everything: how much grain they'd get, how much energy they needed to keep swinging the pickaxe or carrying stones. Every bite was controlled. Too little, and they'd collapse. Too much, and they'd grow strong enough to resist. The diet was never meant to nourish. It was meant to control. Bread became a chain. Hunger became a weapon. Some slaves in the city were luckier. Working in a rich household meant they could sneak leftovers. Maybe a piece of cheese, a bite of fruit, or a drop of sweet wine. But for those in the fields or the mines, the reality was brutal. Grain, beans, and water, day after day. And yet, through all that hunger, Rome kept thriving. Its temples rose higher, its armies marched farther, all powered by the weakest meals imaginable. The empire's glory was fed by starvation, because in ancient Rome, even food reminded you of who you were. The master ate to enjoy life, the slave ate to survive it. Rations of survival, counting every grain. Now, imagine this: your entire life, your strength, your survival, all depending on a handful of wheat measured out by your master. That was the reality for Roman slaves. Food wasn't a right, it was a ration. The Roman elite had everything: fresh fish from the coast, figs dripping with sweetness, jugs of wine from Spain, and bread made from the finest white flour. But for the slave, the food came in numbers, not meals. Their diet was a calculation, cold and precise. According to ancient Roman records, like those of Cato the Elder, a hard-working slave, especially one chained in the fields, got 4 modii of grain a month. That's about 14 to 16 kilograms. From that single ration, they had to make everything they ate: bread, porridge, or gruel. That grain was their lifeline. No butter, no meat, no milk, just boiled wheat and water. And here's the cruel part: slaves couldn't complain. If you ran out of food before the next ration, too bad. You'd go hungry. Some tried to save a little grain each day, hiding it under their bedding, hoping it might get them through tough times. But if caught, punishment was harsh. To the Romans, control over food meant control over the body, and control over the body meant control over the soul. It wasn't just about feeding workers. It was about reminding them who owned them. The master decided how much strength you were allowed to have. He decided when you ate, what you ate, and how much. Some slaves, desperate for flavor, mixed their grain with crushed beans or wild herbs. Others added vinegar and water to make posca, a sour drink that soldiers and slaves used to quench thirst. It was acidic, cheap, and just barely safe to drink. When you think about it, it's shocking. The entire Roman Empire, with its luxury and its legions, depended on people who survived on porridge. Every stone laid in their mighty temples, every road stretched across the empire, powered by stomachs that never truly felt full. The rare taste of meat, a slave's festival dream. If you were a slave in ancient Rome, tasting meat was like catching a dream. It happened so rarely that some could go years without it. Most days your meals were nothing but grain and beans. But once in a long while something special happened, a festival, a celebration, or a moment of luck, and you'd get a bite of real meat. It might be a small piece, barely more than a mouthful. But to a starving slave, it was like tasting freedom. During festivals like Saturnalia, masters sometimes showed kindness by giving their slaves a day off and sharing leftovers from the grand feast. It was the one time of year when the social order loosened. The master would serve and the slave would eat better than usual. But it didn't last. Once the festival ended, the chains of daily hunger returned. For most of the year, slaves had to make do with the basics: beans, lentils, onions, and chickpeas. They were filling, yes, but not satisfying. Protein was rare and malnutrition was common. Many slaves grew weak and thin. Their bodies bore the marks of a diet designed for endurance, not health. Some found ways to stretch what little they had. If you were lucky enough to work in a kitchen, you might sneak a bone with scraps of meat still clinging to it, or the salty leftovers of garum, Rome's famous fish sauce. But slaves didn't get the fine garum the nobles used. They got the sludge at the bottom of the barrel, the dregs that no one else wanted. That's what life was. Constant hunger, broken only by brief moments of flavor that reminded you what you were missing. And yet, even through all that, slaves kept Rome running. They worked the fields, built the roads, and cooked the banquets they would never taste. The city of marble stood on the backs of those who survived on crumbs. Because in Rome, food wasn't shared. It was a mirror of power. What you ate told the world exactly who you were. Food as control, how Rome fed its power. In Rome, food wasn't just about survival. It was about control. Every loaf of bread, every bowl of porridge, every spoonful of beans told a story about power. The master ate to show his status. The slave ate to stay alive. For the Roman elite, feeding slaves was a calculation, not an act of kindness. They knew exactly how much food a body needed to work, and that's all they gave. Just enough to keep you standing, swinging that hammer or carrying that load. But never enough to make you strong, never enough to make you think you could rise above your chains. It was psychological control. A hungry man doesn't dream of freedom. He dreams of food. That's how the system worked. Keep them weak, keep them dependent, keep them busy. A slave's stomach was as chained as his wrists. The master decided what went into it, and that control kept the empire running smoothly. And it wasn't just physical hunger, it was emotional too. Imagine watching your master feast every night. Golden platters of roasted meats, baskets of fruit, fine wine poured like water. You stand there, serving him, the smell filling the air, your own stomach twisting with hunger. That sight wasn't accidental. It was meant to remind you. You belong to him. Even within the same city, Food drew invisible lines. In one villa, laughter, music, and endless feasts. Just a few streets away, silence, exhaustion, and cold bowls of porridge. Rome was a city divided by appetite. So when you picture ancient Rome, the empire of marble, power, and glory, remember this: it was built on empty stomachs. The same hands that served wine and carried bricks were trembling from hunger. The bread they ate wasn't a blessing. It was a leash. Because in the end, Rome's power didn't just come from its legions or its laws. It came from control. And nothing showed that better than the food on a slave's plate. The taste of power. When we think of ancient Rome, we imagine strength, the shining armor, the grand temples, the mighty emperors. But behind that glory was hunger, real, aching hunger. The kind that gnaws at you day after day until it becomes part of who you are. For slaves, food wasn't just about filling the stomach. It was a reminder of their place in the world. Every crumb, every bowl of grain, every sip of sour posca said the same thing: you are property. And yet they endured. They built the empire, stone by stone, road by road, heartbeat by heartbeat, all on diets barely fit for survival. Rome's greatness was written not only in marble, but in the stomachs that went empty to feed it. So the next time history celebrates Rome's glory, remember those who kept it alive. The slaves who ate last, ate least, but carried the empire on their backs.